If you're anything like me, you've probably noticed that pretty much everything you buy has got more expensive. Whether you're putting gasoline in your car or putting food on the table, everything costs more money than it did the year prior. And in case you're curious, the way we measure this phenomenon is via something called the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. And in this video, we're going to be discussing the Consumer Price Index and how it can be used to kind of validate the concerns that people are having that things are simply costing more money. Defined simply, the Consumer Price Index is a weighted average of a basket of consumer goods and services, including things like food, medical care, and transportation. It's calculated by assessing the price changes for each item in this basket of goods over a given year. The Consumer Price Index is one of the primary manners by which we determine the cost of living, which is to mean how much does it cost to actually survive. And what you've probably noticed, especially since the post-COVID environment, is that things are getting more expensive. Prices continue to rise, and in a prior video we spoke about inflation, and inflation is essentially the devaluation of existing currency. However, the Consumer Price Index takes it a little step further, where it kind of gives you an idea of how much it actually costs year over year for the average person to essentially survive. It's also important to note that the Consumer Price Index takes into account a wide variety of goods and services. So when you're evaluating food, you're evaluating foods like meat, poultry, grains, and other types of things. When you talk about energy, not only are you considering the cost of gasoline, but you're also considering the cost of something like electricity. It's very important to consider the correlation between inflation and the Consumer Price Index. They are two metrics that are used in tandem with one another. For instance, if the Consumer Price Index basket of goods costs $1,000 one year, you'd expect without inflation that it would cost $1,000 the next year, and the next year after that. But the realistic truth is that with inflation, with the devaluation of currency over time, that $1,000 basket of goods will then cost you $1,010 the next year, $1,020 the next, then $1,050 the next year after that. A gradual increase of cost. That is how we track inflation. In a deflationary environment, you'd have a situation where you'd spend $1,000 on that basket of good, and the next year it would only cost you $950. That is an example of deflation, where the currency buying power increases over time, which is a little more rare. However, it is something that has happened in the past. The current concern, however, as recording this video, is the rapid increase of inflation, which is the devaluation of currency. While the Consumer Price Index is far from perfect, it is a very useful economic indicator. It allows for the government and for kind of economic bodies to determine the consumer purchasing power and how inflation is impacting the cost of living over time. These metrics are very important when kind of evaluating the economy and making decisions around things like the interest rate and other important economic factors. Let's take a look at some real-world data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. I'll include a link to the description below, but long story short, this is the Consumer Price Index for the United States, and this is month over kind of year over year for a given month. So for March 2022, which is roughly when this video was recorded, all items increased in value or cost by 8.5%. All items across the Consumer Price Index. You isolate just food, food is up 8.8%. Energy, 32%. And then all other items is 6.5% that are tracked. As we said before, it's a weighted average. So energy amounts for a certain weighting to the overall average. If you want to see what's actually being tracked individually, you click on Show Table here, and now you get more of a micro level view of what's actually being tracked so that you can determine what is actually in the Consumer Price Index. So with regards to food in general, 8.8%, but food at home, 10% in, as a kind of aggregate. Cereals, 9%, meat, 14%, fruit, 8.5%. So you're seeing a lot of increase in cost. You also have energy with gasoline, 48%. We're all feeling it at the pumps right now, but no one's wages went up 48% last year, but the cost of gas has. So this is the way, this is why Consumer Price Index is useful for determining how inflation is impacting families and people, in North America and around the world. Electricity, we all need electricity. It's 11% more expensive than it was last year at this time. Clothes, up 7%. New vehicles, 12%. Used vehicles, 35%. Your car breaks down, you're paying 35% more than you would have last year for the same vehicle. That's absolutely insane. Yes, there's supply constraints, and yes, there's silicon constraints, and yes, it's hard to get what you want, but 35%? Come on, that's insane. Alcoholic beverages, well, at least they're still relatively inexpensive. But long story short, what you're seeing here is you're seeing what is being used to determine the CPI. right? Shelter, we all need shelter, 5%. And all of this information is used to determine how the consumer price index is kind of impacting the average person, how inflation or deflation is impacting the everyday person. And the consumer price index is just one measure to allow you to do such a thing. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video helped. I'll link above a playlist to help you kind of learn more about the terms of finance. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in that next video.